Caught on camera, a new video tonight of a man as he breaks into someone's home in Escambia County, Florida. This was just minutes before a woman inside shot and killed him. Cody Long tells us why the woman who pulled the trigger is not being charged.
The Escambia County Sheriff's Office is investigating this as a stand your ground case. The sheriff says the woman was protecting herself and her family. Take a look at this video from the front porch. You can see the man kicking the front door on James Taylor Lane and screaming at those who are inside.
You want to play? Let's play.
Then the 54-year-old man goes back to kicking in the door. After a few tries, he gets in. The sheriff said once inside, he armed himself with a knife and threatened to harm his children's mother. A woman in a bedroom said she was in fear for her life and shot the man in the head. He died on scene. The man had an active domestic violence injunction filed on him, and the sheriff says when this all happened, the man was on his way to an anger management class. Reporting in Pensacola, Cody Long, WKRG News 5.
Tonight, there's disturbing new details emerging about the man who shot and killed a woman and her one-year-old grandchild in a Florida supermarket. The sheriff says there were warnings, repeated threats by the man all over social media. We get more now from CBS's Manuel Bojorquez.
Tonight, the chilling new details of a grandmother and her one-year-old grandson gunned down. It happened yesterday morning just after 11:30 a.m. in this Publix produce aisle. The grandmother parked her grandson in the shopping cart and was looking at items when the 55-year-old suspect Timothy Wall walked up.
There's been a shooting.
Who was shooting?
I couldn't recognize his face. He's wearing all black. He had sunglasses and have been shot a child.
He shot the one-year-old first and then turned toward the grandmother.
The grandma instinctively jumps in and is trying to stop him. She struggles with him. His gun jams. He was able to overpower her, push her down to the ground, and he shoots her down while she's on the ground.
Wall then turned the gun on himself. The carnage was over in less than 4 minutes. The suspect did not know the victims.
There was a chance this could be stopped. You know why? The reason is he's on Facebook. He has said, I want to kill people and children. You think a damn soul told us about that? No.
There is now a growing memorial for the victims outside this Publix store where deputies say surveillance cameras captured the entire incident. They say the suspect had declared bankruptcy earlier this year, his ex-wife telling them he had recently started to act strangely. Nora?
Manny Bojorquez, thank you.
The state of Washington has just enacted a dozen police reform laws following nearly a year of nationwide protest over police brutality. And according to one social justice group, more than $840 million were cut from U.S. police budgets. That was in 2020. The Seattle PD is struggling under the public backlash. The police chief there tells CBS News that 260 officers, that's about 20% of the force, have left in the past year and a half. Think about that for a second. Carter Evans spoke to one officer who says the city does not have their backs.
What's the biggest complaint among officers?
Leadership.
Officer Clayton Powell has served 27 years on the streets of Seattle.
30 years is kind of a pinnacle. It was my goal when I started.
You're 3 years short.
Yes.
Why are you retiring now?
The support that we had in my generation of policing is no longer there.
Last summer's protests over the killing of George Floyd led to violent clashes with Seattle police. Powell says the stress on officers was compounded by city leaders' decisions to abandon a police precinct and letting demonstrators, some armed, occupy an entire neighborhood for a full month.
When you've got rocks and bottles and in some cases cinder blocks thrown at you and we have to stand there and take it, it's discouraging.
Were you told not to react?
In most cases, yeah. When you see businesses get destroyed and families lose their livelihood because of that destruction, and we can't do anything about it. We're not allowed to intercede.
You're not allowed to intercede?
No, no.
City leaders allowed the police-free zone after protesters were repeatedly hit by tear gas, but closed it down after weeks of violence.
The real issue here is that for generations, our Black and brown community members have been asking for more accountability.
City Councilwoman Tammy Morales voted for a 13% cut in the police budget in November.
We spend about $400 million a year on the police department. And as a city, we don't spend on the kind of things that could really support neighborhoods. Affordable housing, neighborhood planning, small business development.
So you're talking about taking that money and approaching a systemic problem at the ground level now.
Yeah.
We're here to fix a broken system.
The money the council cut from police will be reallocated through a still undefined process involving community members.
In the meantime, is the police department underfunded to do its job while you're developing all these other resources?
I would say no.
If the crime rate goes up, is that acceptable?
So if we're investing in communities the way we should be, then we can begin to address that.
I informed Mayor Durkan of my intent to retire from the Seattle Police Department.
After the council cut the police budget, the department's then chief, Carmen Best, retired early in protest. Interim chief Adrian Diaz took over.
Does it concern you that so many people are leaving the department so fast?
You know, it does, because we saw our shootings go up, we saw our homicides go up.
Does it slow down response time?
It slows down response times. I had to get rid of, our community policing teams.
It seems like you feel like you're forced to cut the very people that protesters would like to see more of on your force.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are so valuable.
While Clayton Powell objects to how the city is treating its police force, as an African-American man, he says he understands the outrage over the murder of George Floyd and others.
That could be me, that could be my son, that could be a relative, that could be a friend. There needs to be an understanding of how things got to be the way they are.
But defunding the police, is that the way to do it?
No. If anything, you need more funding.
But that's unlikely. Another $5 million in police budget cuts are still on the table. For CBS This Morning, Carter Evans, Seattle.
That's a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
I understand the outrage, but I also understand you have to have a police department.
Yeah.
You have to have a working police department.
The problem is you want to sustain the police department while you also address these other issues in communities and supporting those communities. You want to do both, which is financially very challenging.
Chief has a big job on his hands.
Yes, he sure
to figure that
does.
one out.